Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the November the 6th, 2017 edition of the City of Brentwood's Board of Aldermen meeting. The board is here before you, and we are going to get started with the meeting here in a few moments. If you haven't had a chance, there are some handouts for tonight's meeting on the table outside chambers. Now would be a good time to grab those if you haven't had an opportunity before. First item on our agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance. If you would, please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For those of you not familiar, my name is Alderman Kramer, and I am sitting in for the mayor for this evening. He's got some items on our agenda this evening, which for the betterment of the process, he's decided to take a leave from the chambers just for this portion of the meeting. He may be visiting us just before the end of the meeting, or certainly as we close our session at the final part of the agenda. So I'll do the best I can to make sure I remember everyone's names and to make sure the meeting goes as smoothly as possible. Thank you for your patience. If we could please have roll call.
Alderman Dimmitt.
Here.
Alderman Kramer.
Present.
Alderman Leahy.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Here.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Weggie.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. I see we have a quorum for tonight's meeting. Once again, we want to thank everyone for attending, all the residents that are here this evening. I know there are some folks who would wish to be here tonight. There are some various viruses, colds, coughs, and things going on. So we understand that some may be watching us on tape at a later time. We are saddened here this evening by a shooting, which you may be aware of, that took place over the weekend in Sutherland Springs, Texas. It took the lives of more than 25 innocent victims while they were attending church services. As we mourn those victims of the unprovoked act of violence, praying for the healing and comfort for all the family members, the mothers, the fathers, sisters, brothers, sons, all the families that were irreversibly harmed by this senseless loss over the weekend. We offer our condolences, and we share their sadness as we mourn the victims with a moment of silence, if you would, please. Thank you very much. As we move forward with the agenda, first we have an agenda that needs to be approved, and I believe we may have a change or two. Does anyone have a motion for a change? Alderman Weggie.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to remove item 11B, which is the first reading of Bill 6166 from tonight's agenda, possibly to be reconsidered at a later meeting.
Second. We have a move and a second for the item 11B, Bill number 6166, to be placed on hold for consideration at a future meeting, that date to be determined. Do we have any questions regarding that motion? If we could have roll call, please.
Alderman Dimmitt.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
And that motion carries. Do we have any other changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
We have a move and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Moving forward to the consideration and the approval of the minutes for the Board of Aldermen meeting for the October 16th session. Take a motion for consideration or change. Alderman Weggie?
Just one, it should be accepted, but can it be noted that I tried to call in, but the audiovisual prevented me from
Yes, sir.
participating in the meeting?
Madam City Administrator, is there any
Under roll call, we
Okay.
can put an asterisk and note that there.
Great, thank you.
Any other items? Motion to approve the agenda as slightly amended,
So moved.
and a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries, and those minutes are entered into the record. Moving forward, up to item 5, we have a presentation this evening for our Century Foundation for 2017, and a report from, I believe, Vicki? And, yes, no, go right ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. I'm Ed Wright, and I am Vice President of the Brentwood Century Foundation. With me is Tony Bowman, who is Secretary, Treasurer, and does just about everything for us. And we are here to make a presentation and to model our new shirts. And which, well, you've got the pin on. You've got the pin on. And we also have T-shirts available, and we'll be selling them in the parking lot after the show. So we are here to, first of all, say thank you. Thank you for the support, both emotionally, intellectually, academically, and financially from the city of Brentwood for our efforts in this last year and as we move forward. We want to especially thank Alderman Lockmuller for his wonderful participation and leadership and guidance and being the liaison with the city. It's been a great help. We also want to thank Bola and Eric and Janet from the city for all of their help. We've been meeting with them and talking about different projects and plans, and we appreciate that very much. We have given you a report on our activities to date and our plans for the upcoming year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. And I'm not going to read through that. As I used to say as a teacher, I am not going to read it for you. You have it in front of you. But we do want to just highlight some things. And of course, the copy of that report can be found. There will be a link on the Brentwood website, brentwoodmo.org, and it will also be on our website, which is brentwood100.org, and I hope people are going to that website on a frequent basis. We have been meeting regularly, both the board, the three of us. Our president, Dan Fitzgerald, is not here tonight, but the three of us have been meeting regularly, and also our entire board, which has about 15 members on it, to represent various segments of the community, and as we move forward, various activities and events. And we're very excited. Our next meeting is on November 30th, and we're going to be getting much more specific in our planning of various events coming up, especially during the centennial year. Those are listed in the report, and you can see what they are, but just to highlight a few that we have already moved quite a bit ahead on. The Art Committee is really moving. They have an exhibit coming up, and Tony can shed more light on that. We have a choir, a community choir that is formed with about 32 kids already in it. They've already had their first rehearsal, and pretty soon they're going to be wearing nice T-shirts, not these kind, but nice T-shirts too. And Debbie Stinson, Ruth Fisher have done a lot to move that forward. We are playing a baseball game using 1919 rules. We've got that scheduled. We have hopefully a concert of some 1919 songs along with a Charlie Chaplin movie or two from 1919. We've got Race to the Courthouse. We've got neighborhood meetings. We've got the Party of the Century is being planned, and that I know is going to be very exciting. And we've got more events, as you can see in the report, and we'll be getting down to the planning on that. And that's going to take not only a lot of energy and effort by volunteers, but it's also going to take some finances, and we know we can count on the city again to help us with that as we also go into the community looking for donors. And I know the chamber and other people are going to be helping us. But our goal really for the next year, as we head in real close to 2019, is to get more and more people involved. We did have a wonderful turnout for the Brentwood night at Busch Stadium. That was actually the night of the cat.
Yes.
The rally cat.
rally.
And Yachty's Grand Slam. We try to bring luck whenever we go there. But we've had all kinds of activities already, but we're looking to involve even more of the community. And for that, we look to you for some help, but we're also, of course, advertising in the Pulse. We've got a website, and we'll have more meetings. But that's one of our big goals. And so we wanted to open up. And first of all, Tony, do you have anything you want
You
to
know what?
add?
I don't have anything to add, but if we want to open to questions.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you had any questions about what we're doing, what's going to be happening in the next year and a half, or where you can get these sharp shirts. You know,
Questions from the board?
Just a comment.
Alderman O'Neill.
I love the day of service idea. I think that
Yes.
should be incorporated for all ages, and I just think that's a tremendous thing.
Yeah, thank you. I did not mean to leave any out, but that's something Will Hankey is working with
Yes.
a lot of the churches and other
He is our
groups.
representative to, there's a pastors committee, and they're working on this. They're actually planning to do more than one. I think they're trying to do one this year, sometime in the middle of the year, you know, mid-year, May, something like that. And then as well on 2019, they're trying to find a grant that can help them financially do more for some of the citizens on those days of service. So, and they're hoping that it would be repeated every year. So that's why they're trying to do one this year as well. It's very exciting.
Yeah, we will be thoroughly pasteurized by the end of that. I'm sorry, that was bad, sorry.
Can you remind
Other
us-
questions?
Can you remind us, what is the actual day, the anniversary day of the incorporation in?
It's December, I want to say, is it 7th?
Now we need Dan.
Yeah. Something like
Yeah,
December 17th.
It's mid-December.
Yeah.
It's like December 17th.
We're going to try to race to the courthouse, I think. One
The
of
reason
those
why I asked
days.
is there have been some questions, is there a special event for that particular day, besides the whole year?
That's what part of our planning is going to be at this next meeting, as we start pinpointing dates and specific activities. So I'm sure we will be stopping traffic somewhere on that day.
Super. Any other questions? Thank you for your report.
Thank you very much.
appreciated. Thank you. On with the agenda, passing proclamations. We have our first public hearing, which we'll gavel in here at 7:12. This is regarding the number 17-11 petition. And Madam City Administrator, how would you like to present this?
If Alderman Kramer would recognize Lisa Korkenmeier to come present
Absolutely.
the information, and then if there are people
Assistant City
signed in.
Administrator, Director of Planning,
to speak.
Korkenmeier, please.
Good evening. So the public hearing tonight is for the Board of Aldermen to consider both site plan review approval and a conditional use permit for a project for a parcel that's located at 2301 South Brentwood Boulevard. It's at the corner of White Avenue and South Brentwood Boulevard. The parcel is currently undeveloped, and the proposal is to construct a custard shop with a drive-through and a walk-up for customers to order. The building proposed is about 900 square feet in size, so it is going to be a small building. It does have, though, a drive-through lane. There will be, the ingress to the drive-through lane will come in off of White Avenue, and then the traffic would flow around the building and exit onto South Brentwood Boulevard. And again, because of the site, though, and the conditions of the site, the turnout for the drive-through lane would be a right turn only onto South Brentwood Boulevard. The ingress on White Avenue that I spoke of would also be an egress for the parking lot that's actually situated on the north side of the building. And this project went through Planning and Zoning Commission back in August. It went through the Site Plan Subcommittee the end of August, and then was presented back to the commission, full commission, in October. So everything for this project was done that's typically done. There was a traffic study that was conducted by the city's traffic engineer, which is Mr. Lee Cannon with Crawford Bunty Brandmeier. We did include the full traffic study, parking study in the staff report to you all. And then also, the landscaping plan was reviewed by the city's landscape architect, which is Planning Design Studio, Mr. Andy Frankie, and I believe we put his comments also into your packet. So the Planning and Zoning Commission, as I said, reviewed this at their October meeting, and after fully being vetted through the process, there was a vote taken that night to forward to the Board of Aldermen, and the vote was 9-0 to 0 to approve the project. So if there's any questions, I know there's probably more details, we can go through that, or we can do that just on a question base if you would prefer.
And just a note for the board this evening, as I've been asked to remind everyone, we have an opportunity at this public hearing, and again, during the first reading of an associated bill with this application tonight, and opportunity for questions once again. Discussion ideally, and maybe debate on that bill could ideally come up during the second reading, whenever that opportunity arises. So back to the public hearing. Director Kirkemeyer, let's see, do we have any questions? Let's take any from the board first. Is there anyone on the board that has any questions they'd like to give? Alderman Leahy.
Lisa, what is the parking on White Avenue? Currently, there is, if I recall correctly, there is no restriction of parking in that first block of White Avenue from Brentwood down, or is there?
I thought there actually was to the first block. If I could just refer to Mr. Cannon, I'm sure it's in the traffic report too. Do you
The
recall
paragraph
offhand?
yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll come back to that
If you
though,
would,
certainly.
please.
Certainly.
Lisa, were the report mentioned some variances. Could you go through and just remind us, and maybe those listening, how those came about? The variances are proposed but not yet granted, is that correct?
So this project did require some variances that were presented to the Board of Adjustment. That was the proper board to take those to. Those actually consisted of 3 variances. Those were approved by the Board of Adjustment back in August. I think their August 24th meeting. What those variances consisted of is this property, which I don't know if I stated that in my opening remarks, but the property is zoned PD, Plan Development Overlay. So with the current zoning with PD, the variances included a variance from the setback between the Plan Development Zone property, subject property, and the adjoining property to the west, which is Zone B, Single Family Residential. In the plan development requirements, there is a requirement that if you have commercial development abutting the residential, that there is to be a 50-foot setback, and 25 of that 50-foot setback is reserved for the landscape buffer. So in this case, those were 2 variances which were required. If you looked at the site plan that was included, the landscape buffer that is provided along this west property line between the commercial and residential zone is 5 foot in width. So one of the variances would have been a variance from 25 and allowing the 5-foot landscape buffer. The second variance would have been for the actual setback for the building itself, the principal building on the lot. And I have to look that up, but it was, the setback for the building would have required, again, a 50-foot setback, and the building is actually 22 feet. I'm sorry, the building is set back 28 feet, requiring a 22-foot variance for the building setback. And then the third one is also in that 50-foot that is supposed to be reserved between the commercial and residential, that there should be no portions of the parking lot or paving in that setback. And in this case, that drive-through lane and a portion of one of the parking spaces actually is also within that 50-foot. So that was the third variance. So those were actually granted, though, August 24th.
Okay. And Lisa, the petitioner did not have to acquire any other property adjacent to their subject? This is all within their own?
That is correct.
Okay. Does anybody on the board have any other further questions during this portion of the public hearing? If not, we'll open it up. Any members of the audience, any residents of the city of Brentwood would like to come forward and give us any questions regarding this application? Now is your opportunity. Please come forward, state your name and address, please, and we'll try to get your questions answered as quickly as possible, or if you just have a comment.
Okay. My name's Jeanette Osterly. I live at 8759 Bridgeport, which is Ward 2. I've been to a couple of the planning and zoning, or I think that's the name of them, when they was considered. I am not opposed to the business, not at all, but I think it's too small. It's not appropriate location. If you just listen to the variances, one went from 25 to 5. If I lived behind it, I'd be upset, but I don't, so I can't talk about that. And I could talk about I call the elephant on Brentwood, the Starbucks. I live on the east side, that side of Brentwood. And we don't have a choice how we go south on Brentwood, how we get out of our subdivision. We have to go out into Brentwood. We could go north and then go around. So I'm very concerned about that. And especially, a lot of my neighbors, I say something about the custard shop, and they know nothing about it. Now, I know that not everybody reads the agenda, blah, blah, blah. But I haven't heard anybody that says, oh, great, there's going to be a custard shop on Brentwood. So that's just a little thing. I'm worried about the site coverage in one of the articles I found online was supposed to be 65%. That's the limit that the city has set. And the building right now calls for 76%. Which is, because I'm a math teacher, 16.9% increase, which, if it was a big property, it's a small piece of property. My whole house would fit several times. I could fit several of those custard shops inside my thing. I'm worried about the parking, the overflow parking. I know Frank Papa's restaurant owner came and talked to one of them about parking, and I don't know if off-site parking has been okayed yet. I'm worried about teenagers coming out after school, and there's no sidewalk on the south side of White. So when kids walk home or walk across Brentwood, they come on the north side of White. Now, being a teenager, they're not going to come to the light, cross at the corner, and then go to the ice cream shop. They're just not. And then there's just no space as far as, if the drive-through fills up, and somebody wants to come in off of Brentwood and there's no place to go, that could back up. That could, there'd be cars, and then you're stuck on Brentwood, and then someone's going to rear end somebody. That could be the worst case scenario, but I live with Starbucks. So I'm opposed. I'm opposed to the location. I'm not opposed to the thing.
Concept.
So any questions for me? No? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the chance to address you. My name
Yes,
is
sir.
Chris Harrington. I live at 8542 Rosalie. So Alderman Weggie and Alderwoman Sims, I'm one of yours. First of all, I want to go on record. I am not opposed to frozen treats, ice cream, frozen custard. I love them, okay? Just not here. And my reason for that is, first of all, if you look at the situation of traffic, which we have an example with Starbucks, that's a great location. I love the fact that Starbucks is there. I just don't like them where they are. And I question the quality of the study that was done, because I can tell you, folks, the traffic is horrible there in the mornings. It's horrible. But most importantly, I think that you need to consider there are a number of children who are on the east side of Brentwood. They cross right there at White. And they cross, we've had concerns about those kids just because, let's say, frankly, that 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are not always self-aware. And I'm very much concerned that as they come back in the afternoon, in those nice fall days or those nice spring days, as they congregate there, which they will, and I hope that the business owner would think that they would, there's a chance for a pretty tragic accident there. I think we need an ice cream and frozen custard shop in Brentwood. I just don't think that it belongs there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? No, we have another one coming up. Yes, ma'am.
Karen Smith, I live on Harrison. I attended some of the planning and zoning site review meetings, and I think that they did a nice job trying to make this, or fitting this operation on there. And I agree with the two previous speakers, and I think it's a great, not opposed to proposed business, but I am concerned a little bit about the traffic. I know they've tried to address that, but, once we have it in place and are trying to deal with the traffic like we had to do with Starbucks, we ended up with yellow pylons going down the middle of Brentwood, which is not the most sightly thing to have in your community. And I'm most concerned and have been really hopeful that with the comprehensive plan, we can do a much better job at transitions from commercial into residential areas. And I'm just concerned that we're going from 25 down to 5 feet. I just don't think we do a good job in Brentwood of transitioning well and protecting our residential areas. And as commercial development continues to try and, expand into Brentwood, it just is going to get worse and worse and worse. And I'm hopeful that our comprehensive plan is going to set up some wonderful guidelines for us. But until then, I think, we're kind of stuck with what we have. And if we can try and mitigate as much as possible, it would be really nice, because I just don't think 5 feet is going to be sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else? All right. Seeing none, let's go ahead and close the public hearing. 7:25. And moving forward with our agenda, we are up to the bids. And is this going to be Chief Curtin?
Yes,
Please,
please.
if we could, sir. This is the general contracting services at the Brentwood Firehouse.
Good evening.
Hello there.
Give me just 1 second here.
Take your time.
Okay, as you all know, we have a situation in the fire station where we determined that we had a growth of mold in the second floor ceilings. It's been a little bit of a lengthy process getting to this point today, but we've had a professional study done that helped identify the types of mold and where the locations of the mold in the station were. That then dovetailed into working with Horner and Schifrin to develop a plan to remediate the mold along with Jergiel and Associates on how best to do that. So Horner and Schifrin developed a plan, wrote an RFP, wrote the bid specs along with Mr. Jergiel and his company, and we went out for bid back in September and October. We had a bid opening on October 17th. We received 3 bids, and we have, the lowest bid was $507,000 by J.E. Foster Building Company. The next lowest bid was from Lexicon Construction at $517,000. And lastly, the high bid was $757,295 by Woodard. Pardon me. It is the recommendation of Horner and Schifrin, after a detailed review along with Mr. Jergiel and his firm, to recommend that J.E. Foster, the low bidder and best bidder in this case, be awarded the contract. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
Any questions for the chief? Chairman Lockmiller?
Chief, in your memo, there's the $67,000 contingency funding and $8,000 for storage and cleaning.
Yes, sir. So on the recommendation of Mr. Heidemann of Horner and Schifrin, a contingency fund of $67,000 was recommended. Purpose of that is the ceilings on the second floor, some have removable tiles, but a bulk of them have drywall ceilings. So during all the testing, it was non-destructive, and they did not open those drywall ceilings up to determine anything behind them. So that being said, they recommended this contingency funding, and we're asking to include that so that we can keep the project moving. And basically what would happen is, if you approve that tonight, that funding will be set aside, and myself and the city administrator would work through that process. If we find out there are additional problems behind the drywall, it's possible we use all of it, some of it, or none of it in this case. So that's the contingency funding. Did that catch what you were looking for in
Yeah,
that?
and but that funding would be, it's not just tied to the lowest bidder in this case, it would be across all the bidders.
That is correct. That would be funding that would be used on if we awarded the contract to any one of the 3 bidders. That's correct. In terms of the storage and estimated costs, cleaning costs, It was recommended to us that we don't add those items into the bid process because the general contractors have the opportunity to put a substantial markup on those services. So it was recommended we directly deal with those vendors separately, and the plan is they are under the amount that the purchasing code requires an RFP. So we would seek 3 bids for both of those services, and we've basically done that, so we know that we're going to be covered with this dollar amount. So we'll submit those for payment once we get to that point in the project.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Further questions? Alderman Dimmitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, the letter that we received, that you provided to us from Horner Schifrin, calls out for total sum for the repair of approximately $683,000.
This was on a Horner Schifrin letter?
Yes. And it's spread out over 2 years, the 2017 and 2018. And in that, the 683,000,
Oh, okay.
excuse me. And then there's the 507,000 bid from, that's in front of us. So is what in front of us, is it the 507 or is it the 683,000?
So the contractor price for the general contractor is $507,000, the low bid, okay? If the letter that I'm looking at is dated October 20th and it breaks it out under budget expenses for FY 17 and 18, okay, so basically what those were is that was working with the dollar amount that we had budgeted through, or actually repurposed budgeted money from our capital fund from 217 and the Public Works budgeted amount from 217 that was frozen earlier in the year, and that equals the 218,000.
Okay, but the $507,000 does not include the contingent fee, right?
That is correct. That's on top of.
And the 8,000 storage is also on top of that?
Yes.
And so if we approve this expenditure, that will then allow the remediation of the firehouse to take place, the mold remediation?
That's correct.
Which involves moving the bunkhouse from the top floor to the bottom floor, all the
That's
construction
correct.
that goes along with that, and the taking out of ceiling tiles and the HVAC as
So
well.
a quick synopsis, just in case anybody else isn't aware. We're going, this money includes cost to remodel the basement into living quarters. When we're done with that process and this entire job, the crew will go back to the second floor and what's been built into the basement will remain. It's money that we have chosen to allocate by putting in a city facility currently as opposed to renting facilities we would have to try to locate somewhere off-site. There's so many issues in terms of how we get to our equipment, how we get the alarms to our guys in the middle of the night, what we do with these trailers, where do we put them. We felt like it was a better plan to keep the folks inside the current building, spend the money on infrastructure that will remain with the city as opposed to rental fees and all sorts of associated costs that'll go down the road when this project's done. The city retains a nice multi-purpose facility down on the floor, basement floor of the fire station, and when this is done, the guys will go back to the second floor. There's also some substantial plumbing repairs that are included in this, which boil down to the sewer line in the street is above the basement floor of the fire station, so we have to lift waste and then pump it to the street, and this pump is malfunctioning significantly, and so the repairs of that are part of this cost. The second floor costs are essentially all of the mold remediation, so that's all going to be done under the oversight of Mr. Jurgiel and Associates Company and Horner and Schifrin. And then once everything is clean and declared safe for operation, the general contractor will get in, make the necessary corrections to the building that have to be made to try to prevent this from happening again, and then put the ceilings back in. Then our cleaning company will come in, do a final cleaning, shampoo all the carpets, do all of that, and then we'll be able to move back in with an estimated timeline of around 5 months.
And that's all I was getting to, is the amount of money that's being requested. It sounds like your department has done everything that you can to minimize that amount of money. Some of the firemen are doing their doing work themselves.
That's
instead of
correct.
outsourcing that, moving, things like that.
We're going to do all the moving in order to save the city costs, yes.
And the 507,000 isn't just construction, it's also the repair of the sewer problem.
That is correct. That is
exists.
included in that 507.
And your understanding, though, is that once this work is completed, this should be the end of it, as far as the mold remediation is concerned?
I sure hope so. I sure hope so. Nothing is harder for me to do than to stand here and face you all and ask for money to solve problems in a brand-new building. It's not easy, it's not fun, and I know nobody likes it. We hope that we've done a very thorough job. However, there is a few questions behind some of those drywall ceilings that I can't give you answers to today, but hopefully we've got everything covered through the contingency funding to take care of that. So in terms of this particular project with the mold, I'm hoping this will put an end to it. We also corrected the HVAC system last year, which was suspect to be a potential cause to some of this with the high humidity levels we dealt with. I'm happy to say that that remedy has been very positive, and the building is in a much, what I would call healthier climate. It's not as moist and damp all the time. That seems to have really solved that problem. So we're hoping that in conjunction with this fix will eliminate any further problems.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Just a reminder to the board, we're in the phase of this particular topic regarding the bids and disclosure of the bids and the recommendation of those. We'll have a opportunity for maybe some more in-depth questioning and some debates as we get into the first and second, both 1 and 2 readings of the bill 6164 a little bit later on. As we continue with the bid portion, is there any other questions here this evening for the chief? All right. Thank you so much, Chief. Appreciate
You're
your
welcome.
time.
Thank you.
We'll probably see you again here shortly. And if we could have Director Eric Grunenfelder, please. We have the next item on our agenda, the request for proposals for the Brentwood Recreation Complex surveillance system and the bid package from that item.
Thank you. So the Parks and Recreation Department included $50,000 in our Parks capital budget this year for the installation of a surveillance system in for the Brentwood Recreation Complex. So we worked with the IT department to put together the big specs that would fit the needs for our department, what we needed, and also would work with what the police department needed in the system they're currently using and integrate it with what they're doing. So we're able to put that out, and we're able to get bids back, and the lowest bid was from Tech Electronics. And we asked for 2 different things, a standard system and then an enterprise system. And the basics of that is standard only gets you 5 users. So we'd have to pick and choose which 5 people would get to look at the software. And enterprise gets you unlimited users. So we could have the police chief over at the police department with 2 or 3 detectives looking at it on their computers while someone at the Parks Department looking at it, and I could be right here on my cell phone looking at the video at the same time. So it gives us the unlimited access of being able to access the video. So that's really the only difference of the standard versus the enterprise software. So like I said, we got the bids. Tech Electronics was the lowest, and since we're under bid, we're asking for the enterprise system. We're also putting in a contingency. During the renovation of the complex, we put in most of the cable runs for the camera system. And so we think most of them are in there, but just in case 1 or 2 aren't in there, that's what the contingency will be used for, and then any other work that might be done. So that is a recommendation tonight.
Thank you, Director Grunenfelder. Do we have any questions regarding the bidding package for this particular item? Once again, this is the subject of a bill to be debated here a little bit later in the agenda. Thank you so much, Eric. Appreciate your time. Moving on to the agenda, we're up to the hearing of any matter of public interest upon request of any persons present. If you have something for us here this evening, now's your first of 2 opportunities to approach the board with a question or a comment, a critique, or a congratulation or a compliment, your choice, or none of the above. Going once, going twice, and gone. Unfinished business, we have none this evening. On to the bills to be given a first reading only. We're up to bill number 6165, and this was the subject of a public hearing that we had earlier this evening in front of the board. We need a motion for the first reading, is that correct, Madam City
Yes,
Administrator?
yes, it is.
And we'll take that motion.
So moved.
And a second. We have a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill number 6165, and roll call, please.
Alderman Dennett,
Yes.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
What are we voting?
Point of order. Point of order, Your Honor. Are we
First reading
voting
of
on
the
a,
bill.
don't we have to have the first reading?
No, this is just, I heard a motion to have first reading, a voice vote would be sufficient for that.
Okay,
Mr.
let's do it
Chairman,
that way.
Mr. Chairman,
All those in favor?
Mr. Chairman, point of order still. Normally, this board does a motion to do first readings, first and second readings of all the bills that are in the agenda. You've got it just for
No,
this
that's
one
not
bill.
I don't think
No.
that's correct.
No.
No. But you know what? Everything's okay.
Okay.
Take a deep breath. Ah. We have Bill number 6165. All those in favor of the first reading of Bill number 6165, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? May we please have the first reading of Bill 6165?
Bill number 6165, first reading, an ordinance granting a site plan approval and a conditional use permit to MBFT LLC for development of a commercial office building with a drive-through at 2301 South Brentwood Boulevard.
And Alderman Kramer, may we have the synopsis, please? Why, of course, Your Honor. Application for site plan and conditional use permit for property located at 2301 South Brentwood Boulevard. That to construct a 909-square-foot drive-through custard shop and accessory parking. The bill is for an ordinance granting site plan approval and a conditional use permit to MBFT LLC. That for development of a commercial office building with a drive-through located at 2310 South Brentwood Boulevard. The request by MBFT LLC for site plan and architectural elevation review and a conditional use permit to construct a drive-through custard shop at 2301 South Brentwood Boulevard, the correct address, was approved by Planning and Zoning by a vote of 9 in favor and 0 opposed. And our presentation this evening would come from Director Kirkemeyer?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
For now, I don't have much more to add. I'll wait for questions, but we do have an answer. It was asked by Alderman Leahy about parking restrictions on White Avenue. So both sides of White Avenue from the intersection with South Brentwood Boulevard, westerly, a distance of 229 feet, are restricted of parking at all times. And then additionally, White, the south side of the street, from Patton to High School Drive, also has no parking at all times. That's what's in the code book.
Any other questions for Director Kirkemeyer? Alderman Plufka.
Oh, thank you. I have a couple of questions for Lisa, and actually I have one for Lee, if it's possible. Getting to the issue with regard to the restricted parking on the streets, there was reference within the parking analysis that at times at least, people working there would have to park off-site. Is there any expectation as to whether that will be just farther west down White Avenue, or?
So
There
it,
would
yeah, it was mentioned in the parking analysis that potentially could happen. It was also mentioned at our site plan subcommittee review meeting as well. So there was no condition placed that they had to find parking. We're not sure if that really is going to be a problem. The petitioner has also stated that people that he would employ, the majority of them would be younger, still walking to work, maybe not driving. I don't think it's going to be a problem, I don't know, 9, 10 months out of the year, but I think what we were talking about was during the very peak season, you know, there could be that potential.
My only other question is, to the point that was made with regard to the variances, both the setbacks to the west and then to the east, as I understand the way the ordinance reads, the setback requirement from the street is 50 feet?
So.
Without a variance?
For the building, that's correct.
For the building, yes. And then the setback from the residential side is 25 feet.
So the setback still for the principal building, also from the side yard, which would have abut the residential, is
Right.
50 feet.
Oh, it's 50, I thought it was 25. What was the 25-foot
So
setback?
the 25 says that 25 feet within that
Has to be
50 should be
landscape.
reserved for the landscape buffer.
I got it. And since the total depth of this parcel is 88 feet?
I'd have to look, I haven't.
Would it be
um,
possible for them to comply with the ordinance without some variance? I mean, would it even be possible to put a building with the current setbacks required by the letter of the ordinance?
I don't think it probably would. I think, again, the utility is pretty low, unless maybe additional property was assembled, so.
Okay. Thank you. And I just have one other question, but it's for Lee, actually.
Sure, Lee, come on up. Recognizing Principal Lee Cannon.
I read with interest your report, and I was concerned. I just had a question, and it had to do it dovetails with some of the public comment we received tonight. At one point, I think in your analysis, you said that there would be a concern with regard to the queue and the length of that queue, depending upon the efficiency of the folks inside and their ability to fill orders within a certain period of time. Since that's not with anybody's control except for the good folks that are working in that building, is that a fairly common observation on your part? I'm just concerned about the idea that, we don't have much control over how fast they're able to fill orders under any circumstances, machines breaking down or whatever within the building itself, and that having an impact on the queue relatively quickly as it goes into the property. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes, and for the record, my name is Lee Cannon. I'm a principal with CBB. We did the traffic and parking assessment for this site, and we are the city's third-party consultant working for you all. The custard shop is a relatively unique business, and while we have some other examples we could look to for similar businesses across the region and throughout the country for trip generation and drive-through queuing, we always rely for traffic studies on the operator data. So the operator has indicated through the use of technology and the speed of service which they believe they can provide, that they can do a 60-second headways. That means that they can deliver at peak times, however they go about it. Each customer that arrives at the window will leave in 60 seconds. So the person in the back of the line is making an order. The person at the front of the line at the window is paying, receiving, and leaving. They did mention they intend to use like remote iPad type ordering systems where they can pay, in line. They don't have to pay at the window. All those types of things will speed the service times. But based on our calculations, they could at peak times sell 150 products, more than one product per car, at 60 seconds, and keep the queue down to 5 vehicles.
And that's the space that's allowed, or that's the space that's there, would allow for the 5 vehicles?
That is correct. If a 6th vehicle came in, no more vehicles could come in off of White Avenue, but it would not block egress from the parking lot with the 6th vehicle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Alderman Lockmiller.
Lee, while you're up here, as you're coming down White towards Brentwood, there's a stoplight and a no right turn onto Brentwood there. So traffic, no matter what, unless you have a green light, has to stop there at White before proceeding on to Brentwood.
A no right on red?
Yeah.
Okay.
That sign, is that a county requirement, since Brentwood's a county road, or would that have been one of our ordinances that put that?
I believe the way that works is that's a county requirement and a sign that's backed up by a Brentwood ordinance so that it can be enforced within the city limits. I believe that the reason for that is if you're headed eastbound and you look to your left, it's very difficult to see based on the distance that building on the northwest corner is off the sidewalk, basically of Brentwood. That's typically why you do a no right on red, because you can't safely see.
I just had another question, but for
Go ahead.
Lisa.
Oh, Director Korkemeyer, could you please come up as well, as we can follow up on a question and get these both handled, if you wouldn't mind?
Lisa, there was a question on site coverage.
Yes.
And I believe the board's able to grant an allowance for site coverage? How does that play into?
Sure. Right, so in the Plan Development Overlay District, for which how the property is zoned, there is a maximum density coverage of 65%. And the depiction on the site plan for the project shows a density of 76%. And there is in section 400.1380E4B a provision in the Plan Development Use Regulations that allows the Planning and Zoning Commission, they can recommend, and the Board of Aldermen can allow a bonus coverage of an additional 15% if they feel like other design considerations merit it. So if you had, you know, a substantial landscape plan, if you had an irrigation system, actually if you have outdoor seating, that's considered an amenity or design consideration. So at this point, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that, again, the part of that bonus coverage be given for this project.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman O'Neill?
Okay, I have a couple of short questions and then one I'm confused about. One is the trash containers. According to the diagram, the trash container is shielded but opens onto the lane that have cars in it driving through. There doesn't seem to be a sidewalk from the building to the trash container, so the workers are going to come out, walk across the grass, walk through the parking lane there where cars are queued to reach the trash container? Am I seeing that right?
The workers should be able to exit the west side of the building and have a paved path up to the trash enclosure. But I think you were also mentioning about the way the trash enclosure is oriented and it's to the drive-through lane. That again actually is to help the trash truck be able to get to that, but it would be that they would have to go through the drive-through lane as well. So you wouldn't more than likely be able to have trash pickup while you have hours of operation and people are using the drive-through lane.
But there is no path or sidewalk on here from the parking spaces on the north to the building.
I'm sorry, Alderwoman O'Neill, I'm not quite following the.
Let's go on, we'll leave that for right now. Let's go over to the parking, the seating, where because of the view, there can be no umbrellas. So I understand coming out from there, you certainly want to see the oncoming traffic, but in June or July, having ice cream sitting outside without any shade isn't quite as enticing as having umbrellas or some shade there. So have they given any thought to some alternative way to do that?
That was discussed during the site plan subcommittee review meeting. So the 4 tables, round tables, are kind of a pretty depiction. Those apparently do not interfere with the site distance triangle that would need to be kept. But again, one of those may have to, not be placed there. I don't know. But there's also picnic tables then that are proposed for the north side of the building. That wouldn't have coverage either, but it was discussed that the tables themselves wouldn't block the vertical distance, but like umbrellas and coverage would. So it was brought up at a site plan review committee meeting, and it was put in the comments that they, probably would not be able to have umbrella tops for those round tables. So I'm not sure if they would plan on keeping those uncovered or come up with another alternative.
Okay, thank you. One more question then.
Yes, ma'am.
The 1-minute turnaround time for a worker to get the order, fulfill the order, hand it outside seems really short unless this is soft serve ice cream, trying to scoop something and perhaps put a sauce on it and hand it out. It seems very quick.
That would be very quick, but the headway or the service time is for each vehicle to leave. So when you arrive as the last car in the queue, if there's 4 or 5 cars, then that's actually 4 or 5 minutes before you leave, if that makes sense. So they take the order, it's being made, you advance through the queue, By the time you get to the window, though, and then leave, that, as your time at the window, is the 60 seconds that we're using as the service time.
According to this, there's only one employee. For the employee to take the order, make change, put on gloves for sanitation reasons after handling the money, that's a standard reaction? 1 minute can do this?
That is not my understanding. My understanding is there are more than one employee, especially at peak times, and that the operator is saying that they can do the 60 seconds. For prepared foods, a national burger chain, fast food, can have service times of 30 seconds. A local chicken restaurant services at 45 seconds per vehicle. I've seen the 20-second car in line go through at 12 minutes. That's pretty impressive. So they employ the methods they need to keep their line short, and I have to rely on the data provided by the applicant as to what they say they can do. But 60 seconds is reasonable with adequate staffing during peak times.
Thank you.
Further questions? Alderman Wiggy.
Might be between both of you. So it sounds like, so it's sized to where 5 cars could fit into the drive-through, kind of a peak time. So what will happen when you're at those 5 cars? Will people, egress will still be happening from the parking lot, but coming into the parking lot will not be possible at that point?
So, yes, you would not be able to come in the parking lot. A 7th car will be on White Avenue if that 7th car chooses to come here. What's important to keep in mind is that the type of business that it is, the peak flows aren't going to happen in a rush hour. I doubt they'll be open in the morning, 7 to 9 a.m. rush hour. They'll probably be open for lunch, because everybody loves ice cream for lunch. They will be open in the PM peak hour, but a moderate amount of business. But then they're looking at weekends and evening hours being their peak, and traffic is much lower on Brentwood Boulevard at that time. But yes, the 7th car, if it arrives, is on White Avenue waiting to turn in.
Right, and if they're taking a left, if they're going west on White Avenue, then it looks like you could get maybe 2 cars on White Avenue before people are sitting in Brentwood Boulevard. So I agree with you that they're probably not going to be in, unlike the white hot rage that we all experience at Starbucks every morning of people sitting in Brentwood Boulevard. It's probably not going to be that bad. But what is going to happen at that intersection? So people can't come into the parking lot if the drive-through is full.
That is correct.
And then what about overlap with Starbucks? So the hours put forward are 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. How much does that overlap with peak hours at Starbucks? Or what does Starbucks look like at 11 a.m.?
It's always busy.
Starbucks, I've done a lot of studies for Starbucks. I would like to make my annual disclaimer in the city of Brentwood that I did not do any traffic assessment or impact study for the Starbucks on Brentwood at White Avenue. So I think probably somewhere between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. is their wheelhouse. That's why they're there. That's why they're on the east side of the road, because in the morning there's more cars going north.
Yep.
So they sell coffee all day long, but not anywhere near the same level after 10 a.m. as they do, before that. So I wouldn't. The peaks are flipped. There's still people getting coffee at 10 p.m. at night if they're open. They'd get it at 2 a.m. if they were open, probably. But their peaks are on different ends of the AM/PM spectrum.
Okay, thank you.
So in regard to the hours of operation, that was one of the conditions that was recommended. And it is our practice after we draft an ordinance And if there are any conditions attached to the conditional use permit, we give that back to the petitioner to get their comments and if they can agree to it. So the hours were included. The hours of operation would be Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Friday and Saturday from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. And then in regard to the traffic, I guess I'll make one other comment, and Lee can elaborate if he would like. But again, with this frontage on South Brentwood Boulevard, if the project was approved and goes into more design engineer phase, planning for construction, these plans were already preliminary reviewed by St. Louis County Department of Transportation. We do that as a courtesy. We're not required, but we'd like to know from the get-go, as I'm sure a petitioner would, if there's any real showstoppers, I guess, if you will. So if it does get approved and the project goes further along, then the fully site engineered design plan will go to St. Louis County Department of Transportation, because invariably they are going to have to work on the existing curb cut that's there along South Brentwood Boulevard. So the petitioner is aware of that. So that again gets more formalized, if you will, when the project, would receive approval, and then as they go into the actual design stage. So.
Other questions on this side? Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes, I'm looking at the drawing, I guess it's dated 10/11/17, and I'm not seeing what type of lighting or anything that they're gonna have on that site.
The lighting, I believe it was in the site plan review, and by the way, I will also recognize that the engineer from TWM, Ryan Servagali, is here also if you'd have questions. But the lighting for the project includes wall-mounted lighting, which means wall-mounted lighting on the building with the deflectors to point the light down. And then also there is going to be some bollard light fixtures that would actually be in the drive-through lane, just to help again with visibility and so forth. So those were the only lighting fixtures that were proposed for the project, was wall lighting and low bollard lighting.
So no pole lighting that might reflect into the residential areas?
I don't believe that was discussed. Would you know? Okay.
What's not yet me?
Oh. Sure.
Come on up. Yes, sir.
Ryan Cerniglia with TWM. The ordinance will require us to have certain type of lightings in terms of foot candles, and we'll have to go through a full analysis and see what that lighting is on all the parking stalls as well as the drive-through. We haven't gotten to that phase yet. That's a much more detailed engineering design. They do have the street light that's at the intersection that will emit some of the lighting for the parking. There will also be the bollard lighting, like Lisa said, and lighting on the building itself. So as we get further in our design, we'll actually analyze how much is being emitted. We're not proposing to direct any lighting at the residence. We also have fencing that's going to be protecting our site and the residential site too.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Other questions? Alderwoman Sims.
Lisa, this may be for you, but I'm not sure. So during public comment, there was some concern about, given its position, location, proximity to the Brentwood, that, it would pose a danger for kids. I have observed, I go to that Starbucks a lot, and I know that those kids cross, I think on the north, the crosswalk is further away from, it's on like the other side of the street. Can you address that concern, as far, was there, with regards to this development?
Well, I don't know if I guess maybe the concern or the comment was made that's twofold. One is that if it's just a typical crossing for pedestrians, whether, whatever age, that if there's more traffic at that intersection, it could be a concern. But then also, I guess the comment could be taken that, it's a use that maybe would draw younger kids to it. I'm not sure, but right, at this point, there's no other improvements that would be required for any traffic signal or, I mean, it's, you know, it's a typical signal in terms of when it tells pedestrians to cross. So I don't know of any other improvements that would be suggested, so, you know, I don't know for sure if, I think it's kind of subjective to know if it would be something to have alarm about or not, so.
Is there anything about, I guess regarding the positioning of the building, the landscaping, I mean, is there anything that could potentially minimize that? I mean, I'm thinking of a kid that doesn't follow directions, you know, zooming into an ice cream shop on Brentwood.
On a bicycle.
On a bicycle, yeah. you
Or
know.
skateboard.
If I might, Hanley is Brentwood and Hanley are heavily traveled county arterial highways. There's a lot of cars. Fortunately, at this location, at this intersection, there's a traffic signal. There are marked crosswalks with signalized indications for the pedestrians to cross. So it's about as safe as we can cross people across a busy traveled roadway. The fact that there are uses that attract younger people and more people along Brentwood, there's many of those. So as a good traffic engineer, I always say this will make you paranoid, but you know, it's as safe as we could reasonably expect it to be. There are sidewalks that are going to either remain or be built on the frontage of this site. And then it's difficult for this entity to expand beyond, you know, its property limits. But there are sidewalks on Brentwood, and those are connected to these crossings. There's nothing that I see that creates a sight distance problem. That's really the number one thing with safety, in my opinion, is can you see? Can the cars see the other cars? Can the people see the cars? Can the cars see the people? So lighting is important. I would say, you know, to light the sidewalks and the drive, to be able to adequately see at the driveways, to be able to see on the site, so that there's no instances of people, you know, maybe walking into the drive-through lane and not being seen, those types of things.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Lisa, if I could, and also Lee, if I could, it's a double question here, so if you could stand by. For those residents who are new to the area and may not be aware, we're looking at the southwest corner, basically, of White and Brentwood Boulevard. Once upon a time, many, many years ago, I'm not quite sure if I can remember how many, there was a service facility there with fuel storage, fuel tanks. And one of the reasons why the use of this land has been delayed for a while, it's been reviewed by the Department of Natural Resources. And there's a timeline there. Lisa, do we know if that is totally finished?
Yes, according to the petitioner and the petitioner's engineer, TWM, there's clearance, if you will, on the parcel. I think there's still probably shows maybe that there was like some old monitoring, like on the topo and stuff. There was there was continuation of monitoring of the site. So it's a green site again, but you're right. It was the site of a filling station at one time.
And Lee, you can chime in here if you know, and Lisa, you may have the quick answer. There was a question about potential for parking on White Avenue. Is that proposed to be changed? Is it residential permit only, or how is that going to be impacted?
The applicant is not proposing to change that. The site plan as drawn meets the city's code. They are required, based on their building size, to have 8 parking stalls. I believe it's +1 accessible stall based on what they have. So they have that. We've talked about strategies in case they are more successful and more parked than the city code requires them to be. That's reasonable. So we've talked about walkers and bicyclists So we want good sidewalk connections. And my recommendation was to find a location on the site to add a bike rack. But in addition to that, we've talked about the very first thing that a business owner does when you become more successful than your parking lot is you push your employees off of the site first. Now, I didn't suggest or dictate where those employees would have to park or where some overflow parking might be, but there are some areas which could be investigated by the applicant for those kind of contingency plans, if you will.
Okay.
So patrons of this business could park along White Avenue legally in areas where it's legal to park, even if it's in front of a home, unless the city decides that's inappropriate and you change your rules and regulations.
Okay.
They could also park in an adjacent parking lot on another piece of private property, although it would be appropriate to have an agreement that says that they can, with whoever they are parking on. And so we've talked to the applicant about that, and they may or may not be investigating that. I don't know. They seemed open to the thought process.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you to representatives for the petitioner and staff for this application presentation this evening. This was our first reading, and we'll be back for reading number 2, more than likely. Potentially some changes could be included. And I ask the board, or if anybody is listening to this and they have any questions, get them to your alderpersons. And alderpersons, if you would, send your questions, if there are any further ones, to our city administrator. Perhaps we can have some answers prepared for those in time for the next meeting. That was Bill number 6165. As we move forward with our agenda, we're going to the second reading topic now for a couple of bills. And this is first and second reading for 2 different bills. Bill number 6163. May I get a motion for the first reading of that?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Mr. City Attorney, may we have the first reading of Bill number 6163?
Bill number 6163, first reading, an ordinance approving an agreement with Tech Electronics Incorporated for security surveillance services at the recreation complex.
Bill number 6163, a little bit more explanation comes by way of the synopsis. Brentwood Recreation Complex Surveillance System Project. This was subject of a previous public hearing. The bill is for the ordinance, a bill processing. The bill is for an ordinance approving an agreement with Tech Electronics Incorporated for security surveillance services at the recreation complex. The project includes the installation of 17 surveillance cameras and video system at the Brentwood Recreation Complex. At our Public Works Committee meeting on October 11th, the motion was made and seconded to approve awarding the project to Tech Electronics Incorporated in the amount of $36,110, plus a contingency, as we heard earlier, of $3,611 for the Brentwood Recreation Complex Surveillance System Project. And it was forwarded to us here for the first and second reading with a positive recommendation. The vote that evening was 3 in favor and 1 absent. This is Bill number 6163. So we have any further information from staff here, from Director Grinenfelder? Anything else you'd like to add? Nope. Any questions from the board regarding this particular bill? Alderman Dennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Eric, if at all possible.
Come on down, please, sir.
The need for this surveillance system, can you tell the board why you need this?
Sure, multiple reasons. One is currently we don't have any video system at the rec center, so anytime there's any sort of accident in the parking lot or any sort of theft in the parking lot, we don't have any way to do anything with that. Anytime there's any theft in any of the locker rooms, we don't have any sort of way to sort of try to investigate that. Won't be any cameras in the locker rooms, obviously, but outside the locker rooms, there's obviously many ways the police department will investigate those type of things. Watching people go in around the time of the theft, people coming out, those type of things. Accidents on the ice rink, accidents on the hallways, things like that. We'll be able to watch those type of things, and be able to do investigations that we're not able to do. So those are the primary reasons.
And these are occurrences that have occurred. You've seen this happen.
Yes.
And not having video in place has caused a problem?
Knock on wood, not as bad here at Brentwood, and I am very thankful that has not happened, but as I've been in multiple positions in my career and talked to many people where the use of technology has been very needed. But yes, it's very important to have the ability to be able to see what's happening in your building from time to time, yes.
So this is more of a proactive measure on your part, based on your experience of doing this over the years?
Correct.
And what is there a retention policy on the videos?
Yeah, well, the IT department will create, they have a retention policy. What the systems the system will store up to 30 days, and so we'll have full access up to 30 days. And then, we'll be working with them on a full retention policy once it's in place, based on the state.
Okay, so we don't have one right now, a formal retention policy yet?
Not one for the city, no. The IT department in Clayton does, so I'm assuming we'll be modifying what they currently have.
Okay. So if there's an incident, someone's made aware of that incident, then steps would be taken to ensure that any video would then be burned to a disk?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Alderman Leahy?
If I follow up on Mr. Dimmitt's questions, Eric, this year, how many accidents have we reported on the parking lot for the rec center?
On the parking lot, 0.
How many accidents have we had in the hallways in the rec center itself?
In the hallways, 1.
How many accidents or problems have we had in the ice skating rink area this year?
Off the top of my head, probably 15 to 20.
Thank you.
Other questions? Director Grunenfelder, it's unusual per the board's, previous agreement to have a first and second reading the same night unless there's kind of an emergent circumstance. Are you of mind that the facts that you've stated so far have brought us to an emergent?
The biggest issue is timing. Obviously, this is a 2017 fiscal year with ordering of equipment. The delay of this was the IT department putting together specifications for the project. So if we could have gotten it done sooner, I would have, and would have asked for a first and second reading.
Going back in time to our chemical incident over there at the location, would cameras such as this been able to see that, provide background?
That day, no.
Okay.
We've also now included, it'd be difficult, there will be a camera in the mechanical room.
Okay.
So depending on the benefit of the camera is we will be able to zoom and create it. Now, the ammonia room does have doors on it. We have, since that day, put in glass for those doors for the fire department. So we would have had a better chance to be able to see it. 50-50.
Okay.
We might have been able to see something in there. So again, another benefit.
Okay. Any other questions regarding bill number 6163? Yes, Alderwoman Sims.
I don't have a question except just a comment that my name is misspelled on the ordinance. Just the one M.
There you go. We can change that. Scrivener's error. Anything else for Director Grunenfelder? Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And now if we could get a motion for the second reading, bill number 6163.
So moved.
Okay, in a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we have our second reading.
Bill number 6163, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance approving an agreement with Tech Electronics Incorporated for security surveillance services at the recreation complex.
Motion to perfect.
Chairman, I make a motion to perfect bill number 6163 into ordinance form.
And a second. Motion and a second from both members of Ward 1. Any questions regarding that motion? And a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Dimmitt,
Yes.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
No.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
So we have 7 yes and 1 no.
And if the motion is signed by the mayor, it becomes,
Oh, it becomes, sorry,
it's okay.
ordinance number 4805.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, we're up to another topic that was brought up during the bid opening, bill number 6164. And judging by the sentiment so far, let's go ahead and have our bill reading for bill number 6164. First reading, please.
Bill number 6164, first reading, an ordinance approving an agreement with J.E. Foster Building Company for the firehouse mold remediation project.
Bill number 6164, a little bit greater detail, the agreement for the general contracting services at the Brentwood Firehouse across the street from our chambers. This bill is for an ordinance approving an agreement with J.E. Foster Building Company for mold remediation at the Brentwood Firehouse. Staff is requesting first and second reading this evening to ensure there's sufficient time to begin work still this year. J.E. Foster will be constructing living quarters for the firefighters in the basement of the fire station. That in order to have a second floor vacated in time for mold removal and reconstruction of the second floor ceilings. Upon completion of the second floor project, the firefighters will relocate back to their living quarters on the second floor. The estimated time of construction is approximately 5 months. The work is due to conclude in the fiscal year 2018. The recommendation is for a motion, as we have for the first and second reading of bill number 6164. An ordinance approving an agreement with J.E. Foster Building Company for the firehouse mold remediation project is in the amount of $507,000, and authorizing the city administrator to approve change orders in the amount not to exceed $67,000, plus $8,000, which is cost related to on-site storage and or cleaning upon completion of the construction work, for a total amount of $582,000. Do we have any questions regarding bill number 6164? Alderman Leahy.
Your Honor, I'd like to ask a question of the city administrator. The last time that we got into conversations on the firehouse, there was an issue about a potential elevator. Has that issue been resolved to the point that there's no way of putting that construction with this construction?
I don't believe that issue has been resolved. We know that because it is a public building, an elevator should have been part of it. But we wanted to address this issue separately rather than combining that with this.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
I have a question.
Alderman Weggie.
So kind of following up with Alderman Dimmitt's question. So what, will this, is there a guarantee in this contract that the mold will be remediated as part of this?
I believe that question was asked of the chief. There is always no guarantee because we don't know what lies behind all the tile. We're very hopeful that this will solve it once and for all, and if not, we'll be back here.
Well, how do we know we're not, I mean, I understand that there's no guarantee that there might be other mold sources in the building, but how do we know we're just not going to keep chasing this for a long time?
Well, it's going to be very thorough what we do once we get in there and start to remove the tiles. Perhaps, Brian, can you speak to any of this? Brian Hildeman with Horner Schifrin.
There's also, there's a performance bond. Would that apply in the case that they was not sufficiently remediated?
I think those questions are better addressed to the two gentlemen.
I'm Brian Heidemann with Horner and Schifrin. This is Rob Jargo with Jargo.
Thank you, welcome.
Rob did all the mold remediation. We did a thorough investigation as best as we could in the firehouse of where we thought mold was present. I'm going to let Rob address that here real quick.
Based on our knowledge, the cause of the mold was caused by two different things. One was the high relative humidity conditions that were present in the fire station, which was caused by the existing HVAC system that was corrected with the application of a DOAS system, dedicated outside air system. In addition to that, there was no solid barrier between the attic space and the space above the ceilings on the second floor. That allowed unfiltered air, unconditioned air to enter the space as well, which, you know, with hot, humid weather, it can also cause condensation on cold surfaces, which would, where the existing HVAC systems were located. So the part of this particular project is to not only remove all the existing ceilings that are affected by the mold growth, but to put in a hard surface barrier to fully separate the attic space and the rest of the living space down below.
Is there testing that's part of this proposal?
Under our contract, we do have testing to test it after the remediation has been done.
And then you'll be confirming it's below thresholds, and if
Correct.
it's not, then we'll just keep going?
Go ahead.
During the reason for the contingency is really because we could not get up above the second floor ceiling. Rob did as much investigation as we can. We have identified all the mold that we think is up there. Once we get the ceilings down, then if we discover any additional mold, it will be remediated using the contingency money. Rob's contract has third-party oversight during the mold remediation to test the building. Once the building is tested and it's tested clean, we're then going to go in and install our vapor barrier ceilings. We're going to reinstall the second floor ceilings and then put the building back. Can we guarantee that there will never be mold again? No, because I'm not. There's other areas of buildings that have never been investigated, how the envelope was built on the floors and down at the foundations. We're pretty confident we're going to solve it. We changed the HVAC system last year, which made a great improvement. We no longer have humidity issues, which was causing the wet and moist air. So we're pretty confident, yes, we have it resolved. Am I positive 100%? No, I can't be.
Do you know when the last reading on mold was to see what the impact was with the new HVAC system? Have you guys tracked that?
We have not.
Do you know if it's possible that has mitigated the issue already?
No, the mold is actually still above the ceilings on the second floor. It's on the light fixtures, it's on all the HVAC ductwork and all the equipment, all of the diffusers and everything in the ductwork. So the mold didn't go away just because we changed the HVAC system. It just, we might have helped it not grow as much, but the mold is still there. That's why this project has to be done, because there is still mold prevalent up above the second floor ceiling.
Thanks.
Alderman Plufka?
Thank you. So to build on what Alderman Weggie had asked, so the thought is that if there is additional mold in spaces we can't reach at this point, it's going to be still caused by that same lack of a barrier issue? Is that, so there's not going to be some third cause that's going to be identified suddenly and then?
There's nothing that we know of right now. We don't see any roof leaks or anything like that that would be causing anything. Typically with a roof leak, you do see water stains that occur, but with this, we don't.
And also to build on the other one of the other questions he asked, looking at the performance of the dedicated system that's been installed, that's been changed, is there any way with testing of the air quality now to at least gain some confidence that the environment has been changed so that it's less mold friendly, I guess? Is that the word for it?
Yeah, the new HVAC system, we were running humidity readings in the 80s and 90% before we changed it. We're now running in the area of 50, 45, 50, 55%.
And is that more normal?
That's very normal. It keeps the moisture out. We've also pressurized the building. Instead of making the building negative where it's drawing in the outside hot air, we've pressurized it so it's blowing the air out of the building.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Demmett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this $140,000 repair that we made last year to this dedicated outside air system, that has reduced the humidity the relative humidity from 80, 90% down to 50%.
Correct.
And can you give us your opinion as to what level of humidity is necessary for the presence or for mold to grow?
Generally, it's less than 60%. That's with a typical HVAC system. Sometimes with systems that run cooler, you may need to, periodically watch that or make sure it's even lower than that.
Less than 60, or you mean more than 60%?
Oh,
It'd be over 60%
over
due to growth of mold.
60% is more conducive to mold growth.
My question. Bad question on my part.
What we actually have in the building right now is you have an attic space similar to your home. And then there's just lay-in insulation at the bottom of the roof joist. Then there's about a 2 to 3 foot interstitial space, and then the ceiling. The insulation is missing, it's been penetrated, there's no vapor barrier there to keep the moisture from coming down onto the ceiling. So you have 95, 100-degree air in the attic, you have 70-degree air on the ceiling, and when the two meet, we're just making moisture, we're making water.
And we have, presently, we have a finished ceiling on that floor, right? It's not a drop ceiling.
It is a drop, well,
Some are
it's a
drop.
combination of a drywall ceiling or a lay-in ceiling, but both of them are dropped below the bottom of the roof joist.
But the ceiling that's going to be replacing it is a more standard tile drop ceiling. We're not going back in with drywall ceiling, are we?
Correct. The only thing we're doing is we're actually putting a vapor barrier to the bottom side of the trusses and a drywall ceiling to the bottom side of that to create a vapor barrier from
Okay.
our conditioned space to our non-conditioned space
Okay,
to keep the moisture out from coming down into the building.
right. Yeah, but the finished ceiling is going to be a drop tile?
It'll be a lay-in ceiling.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Lady, did you have something?
I do. Gentlemen, has anyone checked any potential presence of mold on any of the pipings for the water, hot and cold water pipes that go up and down throughout the building?
Those pipes were covered with expanded foam or,
Foam plastic pipe insulation.
which generally is not conducive for mold growth.
Super, so we clear up the ceiling and then, come back and tell me tear out walls because we gotta go in and play with pipes, because that had moisture on them.
We didn't see
Thank you.
anything in the walls, but we are going to replace all the ductwork on the second floor.
Because that's in the moisture area. Thank you.
Gentlemen, when the system was replaced, the HVAC system, was the ductwork leading to and from the plenum and so forth, that was all changed out? Is that correct? or
No, we only corrected what was called an ERV, energy recovery ventilator, and we put in a dedicated outside air unit to condition the air coming into the building to lower the humidities. We did not do the ductwork. That was not part of the contract at that time.
Did you see a need for that anyway? No. Did you see a need for the ductwork to be attended to, or no?
The major issue that we had was getting rid of the humidity at that time
Okay.
and not going in and doing a complete demolition of the ductwork system.
The I guess, elementary understanding that I have of this particular topic is that growth can happen when the air speeds or the CFMs through the cooling system are too fast, not giving it enough chance for the humidity to be taken out and drained. And in this particular case, you're telling me that you need outside air to be mixed in with the ambient air within this building.
Essentially what you had back then, you had a building running at 70 degrees, and you had a variable refrigerant flow system, which is a different type of system than a normal air handling unit. So the outside air that was coming in was being tempered through an energy recovering ventilator, but it was only at 89 degrees. So I was taking, when the room was satisfied, I was blowing 89-degree air into a space at 70 degrees.
Good gracious.
So at the time, though, the whole concept was fixed first floor because that's where everybody said it was. We have several reports that said we suspected second floor, and then second floor did become an issue.
Thank you. Any further questions? Alderman Leahy.
Gentlemen, just because we have decided to constantly keep our firemen in this building while you're doing this work, what type of monitoring or isolation are you doing to keep the occupants in the building safe while you do this 5-month project?
Second floor will be completely isolated from the first floor by using Visqueen, temporary walls, partitions. Rob will set up when they do the mold remediation,
We don't
an
do,
alcove area, or
Right.
I'll let Rob address it.
we also don't do the mold remediation. We only do the third-party oversight. But we specified that all the remediation work be conducted in negative pressure containments to contain any release of mold spores, during that process.
You're gonna be cleaning up the vent ductwork. Is the upstairs ductwork connected to the downstairs, or what would now become the new living quarters?
No.
Okay, so that is separate, so that the guys don't have to breathe dust and stuff that's gonna be happening through your
Correct.
construction.
Correct.
Thank you.
We have separated the building out.
Appreciate the effort, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for your attention this evening. Much
Thank you.
appreciated. Motion for perfection of Bill number 6164.
So moved, Your Honor.
And a second. Okay, we have multiple firsts and seconds. I'll leave it up to Madam Deputy Clerk to figure those out. And if we could have roll call, please.
With second readings?
Oh, second reading? Yes, sir.
First of all, do you want voice vote on the motion to have second reading?
Sure. Roll call.
Yes.
No,
Oh,
voice vote.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Any opposed?
We've never done that.
This is much more complex than it needs to be. Yes, Mr. City
Bill
Attorney.
number 6164, second reading and consideration for adoption, an ordinance approving an agreement with J.E. Foster Building Company for the firehouse mold remediation project.
Your Honor, I'll make the motion to perfect Bill 6164 into ordinance form, please.
Second.
Now we have 1 and 2. And roll call, please.
Alderman Demmett.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Bill number
6164.
6164 passes, and upon signature of the mayor, becomes ordinance 4806.
Thank you so much. Seeing no resolutions here this evening, it looks as though we're up to the counts against the city. And our chairman of that committee, Alderman Dennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had an opportunity to go over the warrant list with the city administrator, and I would recommend approval of the warrant list in the amount of $129,868.02.
And a second?
Second, Your Honor.
Any questions regarding the motion for passage of our warrant list this evening? And roll call, please.
Alderman Demmett.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. Moving along on the agenda, we have report of committees and department heads and the mayor's report. I'm going to sneak in here with a couple of announcements that I know he would want to make if he were sitting in this chair. And one of those has to do with Alderman Weggie's prized passion, which is the Brentwood Dog Park. The registrations for residents of the city of Brentwood began November the 1st. They run through the 30th. Registration is affordable, especially for residents. There's a secondary resident registration period for non-residents starts December the 1st, I believe. Is that correct? And the dog park location, which is due to have a grand opening on November the 18th, if everything falls into place at noon, will be at the Hanley Park, roughly inside the Hanley Industrial Court. For those who are aware of where the sand volleyball court location is, as you drive in, you'll be in just about the right area if you head that direction. Once again, the resident registration is ongoing and concludes on the 30th. We have a Veterans Day celebration. That's going to be at the Rec Center, is that correct?
That's correct.
On November the 11th. And that's at 11 a.m., I believe.
I believe so, yes.
And that will be over across the way. We have for those watching here on camera, unfortunately, you won't be able to take advantage of this. It'll be too late. But those here in chambers or those here within earshot, realizing that we have an election tomorrow, there's a Proposition 1 use tax on the ballot. We have had some semblance of commentary throughout the public galleries regarding this particular item, and it's really very simple. The state of Missouri has enabled and allowed for the collection of taxes for the pretty much simply the online sales for providers such as Amazon. Those taxes are being collected by providers and sellers such as Amazon, and they are not coming to the city of Brentwood because we didn't enact our own use tax to take advantage of that collection. This is not a new tax. It's a tax that's already being collected in the state of Missouri. The state of Missouri basically has been using Brentwood's money since their beginning of operation and collection, and so this would be an opportunity for the residents to allow our city to include collection of those taxes for our uses. And City Administrator Akande, you estimate per year this will garner us?
About 28,000.
Okay, not a, as some maybe have suggested, not a windfall of a revenue by a long shot, but certainly revenue that would be due to the city. Let's see, any other items BOLA that you can remember that we should be mentioning?
I think you pretty much covered most of them for tonight.
All right, we have, I guess, one bit of housekeeping. There was, you may have noticed there was a Bill 6166 that was placed on hold earlier this evening. There was some question about whether or not that we are going to be, I guess, endangering our placement of that item on the April ballot 2018. And we have plenty of time. We've got until January 23rd.
That's correct.
So more than likely, we will be taking advantage of a debate and reading of that bill much before that timeline expires. So not to worry. Moving on with our agenda, we have a report from Public Safety Committee.
Public Safety Committee is scheduled to meet November 16th, 2017 at 5:30 in this chamber.
Thank you. Chairman Plufka, Public Works Committee. Yeah, any report? Lockmiller? Well, I thanked Alderman Plufka for his report.
Right.
Yeah, in less than 40 hours, if you want to stick around, we'll be back here for the Public Works meeting. It's at 4:30 on the 8th, and we'll be taking up our discussion again on the sewer lateral program.
Thank you. And we have a Director of Planning and Development, special use permit application.
Thank you. Yes, I only have one item for you tonight. It is a special use permit application that was received by Tesla, the electric car company. And the special use permit, just to remind you all, people can request a special use permit for use of property on a temporary basis, which the current zoning of the property does not allow. That's the definition of special use, and it fits a multitude of things. So along with the special use request, this also fits in, this is a request to use the parking lot. It's an improved parking lot that's located at 290 Hanley Industrial Court. And it actually serves as an overflow parking lot for an office building that's across the street that faces Strossner. But the request came from Tesla to use some of the parking spaces in that lot on just a temporary basis, which actually, in also Section 600 of our municipal code, which is in the business chapter, there is also a provision where if someone wants to use a parking lot on a temporary basis, they can come and get approval from the Board of Aldermen. So it's those two things combined that this request comes before you. But again, Tesla is asking to use 60 out of the 96 parking spaces there at 290 Hanley Industrial Court to park their electric cars. There will be no sales, no repair, nobody visiting the lot. It's just a place to store the cars. They are moving their facility from University City to someplace elsewhere out in the county. I'm not sure where. That's already been decided. So this is just kind of an interim use for the property. So I did bring that before you tonight, though, given the nature of it, and again, the connection to Chapter 600 of the business chapter. So that's the request.
Questions for Director Kirkemeyer? Alderman Weggie.
Hey, listen, just clarification, is this the lot that's on the south side of that building where the Miriam switching post is, or is it on the north
Yes,
side
it'd
of
be
that?
just south of Miriam and then just north of the police station.
Okay.
That's
And
correct.
there's no fence around that or anything, and they're okay with that?
No, there's no fence around that lot.
Those expensive cars.
Alderman Leahy.
Who owns the property in question, the 200, or 290?
So it's still owned by the DCM Management Group.
Group to work with. So
Right.
any hold harmlesses and all that for damages and stuff is between these two applicants.
Right, there will actually
Good.
be a lease agreement between DCM
and TAP.
and Tesla. Thank you.
Other questions for Director Kirkemeyer? Seeing none, a motion to approve the special use permit as presented.
So moved.
Second, Your Honor.
Second, motion and a second, and a roll call, please.
Alderman Demmett,
Yes.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
All approved. Thanks, Lisa. Thank you so much. Our Ways and Means Committee Chairman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will continue the discussion on the 2018 budget this Thursday at 6 o'clock in this room.
Excellent. And as a side note, all of the board has received their preliminary drafts of that budget. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes.
We're all excited to receive those. Report from our city attorney?
No, nothing, sir.
And City Clerk Administrator.
Nothing.
Excise Commissioner.
No report.
And Library.
Yes, short report. The city library is looking for a new youth services director. Lindsay Beckman is leaving. She has a very attractive position at the Central Library downtown in charge of planning multiple events. But we will need to replace her, and they are working through proper channels to try to find something. Last night was a farewell, but she will be here one more day. If you did not have a chance to wish her well, you could go in tomorrow and say hello and goodbye.
Super. Thank you. Municipal League? Nothing? Any announcements? Alderman Leahy. Oh,
Thank
I
thank
saw the
you.
hand coming up before it got there.
Your Honor, if I may, I have a few.
Absolutely.
All right. Would like to make the announcement that in the month of November, this Saturday, the Boy Scouts of America will be distributing their Scouting for Food bags throughout the entire city of Brentwood. We ask that you are generous. All the food that is collected here in the St. Louis area stays in the pantries here in the St. Louis area to work with, and the need unfortunately keeps growing each year. The boys will drop the bags off on Saturday, the 11th, and they will come back on Saturday, the 18th, to pick up the bags. And the city of Brentwood has agreed to work with the Boy Scouts and again allow the old fire bay here at City Hall to be a collection point. So I ask that you please be generous for those in need. Back in March of this year, during the elections, we lost one of the candidates for mayor and a resident of the city of Brentwood, Louise Charbonneau. Mr. Lockmuller, myself, and the Parks Department have arranged to do a tree dedication in Louise Charbonneau's memory on Friday, the 24th of November at 10 a.m. at Oak Tree Park. That if you would like to come and participate, it will be a short program, but we'd like to remember Louise at that time. Finally, we have a Ward 3 meeting for the month of November. Will be on Tuesday night, the 28th of November at 7 p.m. here in the chamber, and all are invited. Thank you, Your Honor.
Absolutely. Any other announcements? Alderman Plufka.
Ward 1 will meet in this chamber for their Ward 1 meeting November 14th at 6:30 p.m.
Next Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday.
Alderman Weggie?
In an effort to make sure we have a meeting every night this week, the Ward 2 meeting is tomorrow night, 6 p.m. And in an effort to show citizens part of the city hall they might not see regularly, we will have it upstairs during the elections.
Yay.
Nice.
Any other announcements? Okay, thank you very much. We now move on to new business. For those who may not be familiar with this topic, has to do somewhat with our previously placed on hold Bill 6166. There was a question about if we were to move forward, for example, with our Manchester Corridor flood mitigation or renewal project, what kind of economic benefit might the city see? And this has to do with that. So to make our presentation this evening, I believe is going to be...
You actually said everything I could have said.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Unless there's specific questions, they've started the work, and Andy Struckhoff, as you know, was at the workshop on Wednesday last week, and I believe there were a number of questions that were asked of him. So task 1 has already been completed, and task 2 is to do a more in-depth review of the revenues that could possibly, that are currently generated, and to look at the top 8 retailers and what this could probably, how it could impact them, given national trends, given the online presence of retailers that we're continuing to see. So they indicate that this report will be ready the week before Thanksgiving, 3rd week of November.
So the good news is, if we play our cards right, we might see this report before entertaining Bill 6166 and be more educated in that regard.
Absolutely.
Does anybody have any questions regarding this item of new business? Alderman Plufko.
Do you require a motion for us to act on this tonight? Is that what
Yes.
we're doing? Okay. Well, then I move to authorize this task order.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions regarding that motion? Now would be the time. And a roll call, please.
Alderman Dennett,
Yes.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And I ask our city administrator, if you haven't done so already, could we please send a notification to our mayor? Because we are almost at the end of our agenda. And so that he, wherever he might be waiting nearby, he can be present as we move along. Now's the opportunity for hearing of any matter upon any persons present regarding the public interest of the city of Brentwood. Now's the time to come forward. If you have anything for us, once again, we'll take compliments, criticisms, thoughts. Going once. Oh, here we go. Yes, sir.
I'm Keith Ravenberg. I live on St. Clair Street. You all know me. I'm on the school board. I came for two reasons tonight. I'm actually a member of the Brentwood Century Foundation. I knew where the group was giving a report. I thought it'd be good to be here. I'm a low-end participating member of that group, frankly, because I'm the school board's rep. I also understood you were considering what you just talked about and the ordinance that was postponed. I just wanted to let you all know that from my perspective, the kind of things that you can accomplish in that regard, I'm all in favor of. And I do appreciate the fact that we've been trying to work cohesively together. We've had some ongoing meetings. It's been a while since we've communicated. We're approaching the point from our side where, and hopefully some things will gel in the next week or so, where it'll become clear what we're going to be asking for next year. We still plan to put a bond issue on the ballot in April. That is our current plan. The actual details are not quite there yet, but we're moving in that direction. And so I just want to let you know that I appreciate, I'm complimenting you, Alderman Kramer, actually Alderman Weggie for making the motion. That we don't want to be in contention with each other any more than is necessary, obviously. But you know, they're two different things, and I appreciate whatever you guys can do on that sort of project. I know it's a big project and challenging, so all the best on that.
Keith, I think you already know this, but I just want to make sure that you know that the city apologizes to the school board if there is any a problem with even the topic coming up before you've entertained your.
No, that's not our feelings at all. I just want to make sure, we both have our own things that we have to do, and we have to stop and make sure we pay attention to each other from time to time, and I'm always guilty of that. So I because of all these things going on these days, I think I might make a point of coming to your meetings more regularly now. I think this is the first time I've been at one where I've stayed all the way to the end. So.
You haven't got there yet. We're not at the end yet.
We feel your pain.
Apologies again.
I see after this is it's closed, so you get to kick me out at that point in time. But anyway, I just want to let you know that I hope we can continue the cooperation. It's been very good, I think, in the last
We've
year.
really enjoyed the cooperation and the meeting schedule. Do you think you've got a meeting this month where you think you might have some?
Well, we have a facilities committee, and they're meeting again Thursday of this week over in the conference center at the central office. And the hope is that it's going to be pretty much gelled by that time. Now, I can't guarantee that. There's a few things we're trying to make sure we consider everything that might come up, and it's a challenge. And then I think if I remember I think it's in January that our board needs to make the decision as to whether we're putting something on the ballot in April or not. So time's flying, but that remains our goal. I just wanted you all to know that for what
Thank
it's
you.
worth.
One of our aldermen has a question. Alderman Plufka?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I apologize, I know this isn't exactly the appropriate format for this, but Keith, if we do vote to postpone our vote to August, can you give us any assurance at this point that the school board's not going to come forward with a bond issue in August, depending on the results in April, or depending upon your ability to be ready?
I don't know that I could assure one way or the other, because why, you know, if we decide that we can't put it on in April, I don't know exactly what the reasons for that would be yet. If we put it on the ballot and it doesn't pass, I don't know the reasons why we'd be trying to do it again that quickly. We might be, but if you guys, if your view is that you're gonna do this in August, then we're not gonna object to that anyway. You know.
Right, I just wanted to make sure that.
And we'll try to, we'll deal with it in whatever way seems to make the most sense, is all I can say, and I don't know what that would be. I mean, from the one perspective, you know, you probably have statistics as to sales tax. Does that come from, is it a majority or a minority of it that actually comes from taxpayers in Brentwood, the people who shop in the stores? I don't know. I'd assume it's probably substantially not. So it's really two very different things going on.
Yes.
I think, you know, someone could try to make it look bad if we're both asking for something at the same time.
My
So
only
we
point,
wanna
in bringing it up is if you're asking, or if the board's sentiment is, or their understanding is that they don't want to, they feel that they have a better shot to pass a bond issue if they're the only thing that's asking for taxpayer assent to a tax increase on a particular election cycle. And we say, okay, we understand that, so we're going to move to August. I'm just looking for some assurance that you're not going to double us up in August and ask us to move again.
Well, I can only speak for myself. I wouldn't want to do that. That would be my view, but we actually have a meeting tomorrow. I think we'll be talking about a lot of these things, actually.
Thanks very much. I appreciate your candor. I know you can't speak for the whole board.
I just want the cooperation to continue. And
Yes.
I think we can all do this right.
We're on a new pathway.
All right, so have I
Thank
taken
you.
more of my allotted time? for this?
No, you're fine.
And Alderman Lay's going to throw me
Thank you for
out.
being here. You're welcome back anytime.
All right, thanks
Thank you,
a lot.
sir. Is there an aldermanic response to what we've just, okay. City
Your
Administrator Akande, how would you like the motion? Or Alderman Leahy, you go right ahead.
I'll make a motion that the Board of Aldermen move to an executive session for legal reasons, according to the revised Missouri Standard 610.021, subsection 1 for legal, subsection 2 for real estate, and subsection 3 for personnel, and that we then adjourn the regular Board of Aldermen meeting from the closed board meeting.
Second.
And regarding that motion, we are going to take a 10-minute recess before we reconvene.
We have to vote on it first.
Yeah, all those in favor?
Okay.
Not roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call, go right ahead.
Alderman Dimick?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Thank you. For those in the audience, we are probably not going to be coming back to see you. Thanks for being here this evening. All the important in-public business has taken place, and now we're going to go to another chamber. Thank you so much.